Thank you all very much. Greater love hath no man for books than he give up his Sunday afternoon nap. And greater love hath no woman for books than man ever has. Because I think women probably make the largest section of the book reading published. So there's one kind of theory, all of us are now writing for women. Whether you're men or women, you're writing for women. So, hey, welcome ladies.
No, that is one question. Sorry, I got it back through.
But you sound wonderful.
Okay.
You sound like Amitabh Bachchan.
So, that is one of the questions I was going to ask you. Maybe let's start with that. Yeah. We're not going to talk very much about Jerry's book because, it's quite a history, so you don't really want to give too much away. In April it will be out, then I hope all of you will buy copies of it. It's quite what I want. But so that question about women, majority, that applies, seems to apply more to crime fiction. And so I have never understood it. You're not a woman, but you can attempt answering.
See, the funny thing is, I remember once a student of mine was doing research on Manohar Kahaniya, this one of those pulp fiction indie magazines that comes out, and is sold generally at railway stations. And and I'm very glad to see it there. It looks exactly the same as it is. Some traditions should not. A chubby woman and a man looking lustfully at her, where the woman puts on an air of that, mixed innocence and prurience. It's a wonderful formula. So, and my student and I made this classic mistake of assuming that the large majority of this magazine's readership would be men, would be lustful, sad-eyed men who take this home and read it. And all the shopkeepers told us otherwise. Women were the largest buyers of this, but when they bought it, they needed it to be concealed suitably. So it was actually that brown paper envelopes that they would arrive with a brown paper envelope because the station sellers would not have them, and hand over the brown paper envelope and mumble the name. And they would never say the full name. So they'd say Manohar, or they'd say, Prem Bhai, or Raswali, or whatever they do, like one suitable adjective there was, and these would be handed over to them. So what were they actually doing? I think, I can't speak for them, and I think one of the saddest things about being a writer is that we don't know what motivates people to read our books. For instance, I wrote a book called A Bell for Felicia. It was sent into Penguin, and it somehow ended up on Puffin because it has a teddy bear. But the largest number of readers for that book are young women. I have seen people, young women, pull it out of their knapsacks, out of their books and say, I read a few pages every time I'm feeling low, etc. I think, okay, I can see why a teddy bear is a nice thing. Generally, teddy bears. Yeah, come on. Have you heard of a murderous teddy bear in your life? No. A murderous doll, yes, child's play. Remember that doll with the wonderful eyes? Yeah, but not teddy bear. Couldn't do it with the teddy bear. So I'm thinking, what motivates you guys to pick up a book will always be a mystery to we guys. We pretend. We say things like, it has this vicarious enjoyment of the possibilities of other people's lives often motivates, but that's petty. It's nonsense. It's what you're imagining other people sort of thinking about. There's another way of saying it. People say when they make up a book, "Ye meri kahani hai." I could read. There's this lovely moment in Balraj Sahni's autobiography where he's standing on the road and he can't understand what he's doing in Bombay cinema. He is so petrified of acting that if you should ever have stage fear, imagine this. Balraj Sahni is so afraid of facing the camera that he pees his pants before a shot. He's terrified of being stiff. He can't understand how these people act so fluently and naturally and say these improbable and strange lines. And then he's saved by this man who comes up to him when they're shooting What's that? One in which they're running on the road. Go Vigasan, correct. And that man comes up and says, Sahab, and when he tells him the story, that man says, with tears in his eyes, Sahab, ye meri kahan hai. But Raghav Sahab, kyunki ye meri kahan hai. Okay. And suddenly, that is another moment. Is this your life? Or are you now visiting a life? Which is it that motivates you? Probably both. Probably, we'll never understand what is the magic that brings you into our world. To what extent must we construct this world for you, and to what extent must we invite you to be a participant in the co-construction of this world? Where are the gaps that we have to let go? Where are the places? We do this all by instinct, and then when the Crime Festival or the Writers' Festival comes, we invent backstories to tell you. Okay? But then we are storytellers. Everything that I tell you about my process is a lie. Okay? But in that lie, in the construction of the lie, you will be able to smell who I am, because even my lie smells of me. Every piece of fiction that you hear has the body odor, the flesh smell of the writer. That's what you're looking for. The spoor, the trace of the real person. Every book, therefore, is an investigation where you follow with your nose a trail left behind by a real life person, leaving markers for you of his identity. And it doesn't matter whether that writer is writing about a 65-year-old woman who became the world's most beautiful, one of the 5 most beautiful women in the world, like my Leela book, or a dancer who danced for 30 years in Hindi cinema, like my Helen book, or a teddy bear that has lasted for 100 years, like a bear for Felicia. Notice the clever way I have put in my commercial breaks, so that you will go out and buy these books.
So, and you feature in this book, the next one. Yeah, you do. You give us industry, but you do.
You're not supposed to tell that. I feature in the book,
yeah. Okay. No, so the thing, I mean, there are saying that they would read, and then the detective, the press room, and in yours, there are 2 in a sense. And I found that the strongest part of the book, I mean, of course, there's a murder, there are many murders, and one of them very, very gruesome. So, but the thing, so there are 2 people, there are 2 friends. One is an inspector called J.D. and his friend was a retired journalist called Peter. and Peter's wife, really. And they're middle-aged, all 3. Which again I thought was a bit of a risk that you were taking. But it is so wonderfully done, the friendship, also the friendship between Peter and Millie, the wife. And the manner in which Peter together with Jim, with some help of Giddy also, they kind of solve the crime in a sense. What made you decide on this pair and then putting Millie? It's like you're not just going straight murder mystery.
Okay. Again, let's just go back to that moment where I talk about spur and trace and things like that. When you are writing, what are you doing? You're actually splitting yourself into several things, right? So one bit of me is a retired journalist. I remember my first boss telling me, you have the air of someone who's already retired from the rat race. And I thought, you're being insulting, no? You're trying to insult me into some awareness of ambition and all. But I'm taking this as a terrible compliment. I think it's a lovely compliment to be made if you're working and they will still keep you there and you're retired already. So I was a retired journalist at 21. I was an old man at 18 and they have some cranky, crotchety old man. Please stand in line, how can you do like this? I was that kind of like cranky old man at the age of 18. And part of me is a woman. So I was walking in Palika Bazaar today and everybody was saying, sir, ladies, sir, sari. I thought, no, I'm wearing pants. I don't want saris. But everybody took a universal kind of feeling that this man will buy a sari. Okay. I genuinely take that as a compliment. There are no issues with that. Okay. So a bit of me is not sour old woman, but a perslit told woman. And you're sort of looking at the world and saying, so, is this really the way it should be? A part of me is a deeply committed activist. Okay, so when I am working with Neil Joel, or I am working with Childline, or I am working with the People's Free Reading Room and Library, who has just unsuspectingly made me a trustee and I'm very worried now. You know, when I'm working with that, then I'm changing. And when I'm walking down the road, I'm just looking at people and telling stories to myself and Peter. So, how do I use the aspects of my personality and turn them into some kind of useful stuff? Well, you break them up and you tell a story revolving around yourself. Now, does this sound like extreme narcissism? Possibly, but what can I say? I'm Gemini. There's two of us already, and we look at each other and we really like what we see. So it works that, and
well, listen, they're not conventionally like it.
No, and also, sort of like, okay, I think part of my constant struggle with myself is self-doubt. Okay, so I'm really nice to deal with 98% of the time because if anyone says anything nasty to me, I've already said it to myself. I'm done with that. So if you say you babble too much, I know. Like I can't get to 50 without knowing that I talk too much. And people say you write too much. I know, but I kill most of what I write. So can you imagine? I'm already dealing with doubt on a regular 24/7 basis. It's a fundamental part of my character. Made me a decent journalist. Okay, so I could not write a character. I cannot write a character that believes in his viewing of the universe as the correct viewing. And this fundamentally underlies all fiction, that there is no single viewing of the universe, and each new viewing of the universe becomes a fresh reinvention of the universe because the person viewing it has changed. And hey, what do you know? In 1920, Heisenberg said this is physical truth. It's the truth of physics that the change in the observer changes the behavior of the particle, changes the speed of the particle, changes the universe. So if you should ever be told by someone when you're writing a novel, "Ye bahut baar sun chuka hu." Yeah, come on, yeah, let's do something new. Say, the new thing is me. The story is old, but all the stories have been told. The first, absolutely the first that I can think of, literary crime is Sophocles' Oedipus Rex. A crime has been committed and hey, look at this, the thrilling nature of this crime. No one even knows what the crime is. They just know that there is a disruption in the moral order and this disruption must be settled, and out there things are going really bad. So, first rule has already been broken. We don't know what the crime is. Second rule, they go to the detective, to the king, and say, you must find out who the criminal is. And the criminal starts to investigate, the detective starts to investigate, and the footsteps of the criminal lead him to the mirror. He is the criminal, the detective is the criminal. The murder of Roger Croy came 2,000 years later, and Christie was banned for having done all that. It was done by Sophocles in Pax First Movements. And then restitution follows. He is blinded and led away by his daughter come sister. But because Sophocles is just a phenomenal inventive genius, he tells you moral order is not restored. Now Antigone must fight to restore her moral order because her brother is not going to be buried because he is also part of that crime. And the next in Sophocles' trilogy, Oedipus et Colonna, and from then on, Antigone, powerful stories of the same kind, rippling, echoing, resounding, right through the ages. Do you imagine that with restitution, with killing someone, with blinding someone, that justice has been done? Fools, says Sophocles. Fools if you think so. An act will have its way. It will come to the surface. Murder without, as Shakespeare says. This is what we have been taught from 2,000 years. We have not learned it. We have still not learned it. We think that if there is a 14-year-old who has committed a crime, reduce the age of this thing, punish them, punish it. Won't work. Won't work. Much more fundamental investigation into the nature, into the root of crime is required before we can deal with crime in a manner that befits the term humanity. And if we cannot do this, we are not living up to the standards that we should be setting for ourselves in a civilization.
It's interchange data, so I mean, I like that interchange for whatever it is. But okay, enough about the book, otherwise we begin with conversations. But I thought we'd move a little to Indian context specifically, and I think I may be wrong, but I think that it's been about a decade since we've had, at least in the English language, people writing, trying. Many of them. There may have been some earlier, but not really. I mean, I can't remember. And no established, what you call a writer, affected it. And I've always found that strange. But in the last decade, there has been. But what there was, I think, the kind of history in terms of crime history, that was in cinema, popular cinema market. And when we were talking about the awful Shalimar, but there was some really good films too. And I thought even the wonderful way we should talk about cinema, and now this crime, the two together, just talk about some of the best and the worst crime movies.
And if you have not seen Shalimar, you have to see Shalimar because you will laugh your way through the whole of it and you will enjoy it in a kind of fundamental and crude way, which Bollywood was so good at. Like in the beginning, there is this wonderful song, 1, 2, cha-cha-cha, 1, 2, cha-cha-cha. And Aruna Irani is leading a dance class of young extras. All of them are doing 1, 2, cha-cha-cha. And you think, okay, this is some, because if anyone is dancing, Western style dancing, then it is always a concealment for some terrible, like someone is dealing with drugs or selling women in the background. Like Western people like that, only that will front the dancing feature, they will crime. Okay, that's the deal. And then suddenly in the middle of 1, 2, cha-cha-cha, someone falls down, one old man. And you think, okay, now the dancing will stop and they will say, oh, dead man. But Aruna Irani glares at all of them and like this dominated stone says, 1, 2, cha-cha-cha. And all of them are stricken into 1, 2, cha-cha-cha. The dead man continues on the floor. And then you think, okay, so this is nice. It's like, this dead man is going to have repercussions and we will find out. We don't. Dead man, 1, 2, cha-cha-cha, Aruna Irani dance kiya, please, go. Now suddenly, tigers are jumping out. And then we go, Zilpa, Dharmendra, Jira Vijita, somebody, everybody coming and going and trying to get one diamond. And the way Dharmendra gets the diamond at the end is juicy. It is delightful. You must see it yourself. I will not repeat it. But it is a crap film. And an equally crappy book was written on it by Manohar Maldavkar called Shalimar. So it seems sometimes that if you want to write crime, really what you've got to get is you've got to get the nuts and bolts correct. You've got to get everything. In the morning we got Catherine talking about, strychnine and this poison and that poison. In Hindi cinema, it was enough that there was zahar. And the zahar was bright pink. And it fumed as it fell. Yeah. And you think that this zahar is not, no one is going to drink this except this feasibly inclined to say, lard, and burn my mouth and let me swallow this. Because a good zahar has to be kind of like, sort of like, it has to be like, I don't know, like an extra, to mix and mingle with the crowd. But this zahar was elegant. It was the center of the show. So, everything was wrong, but yes, there were morals. Achanak, for instance, with Vinod Khanna being chased by a dog. One dog and Vinod Khanna running. Ittifaq, Rajesh Khanna and Nanda, just the two of them, tight, close pressure cooker of a house. Frightening and terrifying, and you're just watching thinking, this is not Hindi film. I don't respond to Hindi films. What's happening next? It's just incredibly tightly done. It was made in 9 days. Okay, so Ittifaq is one of my all-time favorites. Then, of course, Teesri Manzil. And then someone jumps and she dies. And Shami Kapoor goes running. And Helen is standing there, wrapped in fur. And she says, "Tumhe bahan nahi jana chahiye, Rocky." Rocky? You know that little joke coming out to me. You know immediately this is a poisonous woman in a poisonous situation. Juicy it was. And then, terrified and Asha Parekh comes to investigate. Of course, she prays before she comes. Bhagwan mein badi aas leke aayi. Sorry, that was unfair to Asha Parekh because we covered a nuisance. I think so. Okay, maybe she's
but she's trying to angle for lots of money or something. Oh no, who was it who said that she climbed many? Somebody said she climbed many stairs to the fourth floor because she wants him to nominate her for something like that. Anyway, she probably get it. But what is this? Very nice.
okay. No, so I think what happened with the writing of okay, Ravi's major function as my editor is to take out 98% of the book because the large quantity. My style is kind of like I get from Bombay to Delhi, but I have to get to California first, and then I come back to Delhi. But I think one of the reasons why we didn't write about crime is because it's a very dangerous thing to enjoy crime fiction. Okay, because what you are saying actually is that the body in the library has no meaning at all. There's a dead body, and the dead body constructs for us a reason for enjoyment. The enjoyment is very simply the enjoyment of a series of connected clues. So it's literally like a crossword puzzle, but at the bleeding heart of this crossword puzzle is that huge question: is life or death really important? And for the dead body, life is not important because if there is no dead body, there is no enjoyment for the rest of us. So our enjoyment of the murder mystery rests squarely on the German term Schadenfreude, which is our enjoyment in another person's misfortune. Right? That I'm alive. It was his turn now. So in Goa, on all graveyards, there is a big board that says, Ais Mata Fayatuka, which means it's me today, tomorrow you're getting here. Right? Yeah. They don't spare you those graveyards. You walk past with a little quiver in your heart. But I'm saying, this is what, and consider this. The murderer, therefore, is one version of God. At the bleeding heart of a murder mystery again, is someone who has decided to take questions of who lives and who dies into his or her own hands and to deal out life or death. This is what we secretly, our secret desires are all literally dragged out of us while we are not even aware of it as we buy crime fiction. We are not even aware that we are participating in a macabre feast of death. But this is what it means to be human. It is why when after a funeral you come back for the wake, or you come back to the person's house 10 minutes after quietness and silence, everyone's laughing and telling jokes, and the party begins because we are all relieved. Wasn't my turn. It wasn't me this time. A murder mystery therefore allows you to participate in that kind of scenario. Big, brutal, talking about life and death, while never ever straining you by pointing out to your life and death. Which literary fiction will do? It will put a burden on your soul. It will say, this is who you are. Recognize yourself and your flaws. See what your life is like. The murder mystery. Yesterday, I think Namita Gokhale said that Camus felt that the only place he could find hope was in the murder mystery because, and it's very easy to see why, moral order is effortlessly restored at the end of the book. In Antigone, in Sophocles, you see that murder without and it will ripple across time and space, and we will continue paying for it. This is the difference. This is the difference in our enjoyment of it. This is our difference in the construction of it. Therefore, in general, when someone died in Indian fiction, they died in a Brahminical setting, which is where, for instance, at the beginning of Samskara, you are under the novel, the dead body is only a peg on which to kind an investigation of all the social rituals and the mores and the philosophies underlying Brahminical influence. Any dead body that you can think of in literary fiction serves a very, very dire purpose. Munnu, when Munnu dies in Mulk Rajanan, Munnu, it is a death that points to our unconcern for poverty, our ability to be buying books when people are starving. This is uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable, and therefore literary fiction doesn't get read terribly much as it should. And because writers were all aspiring to be literary. For a long time, there was only one kind of book, the literary book. I remember looking at the first 20 titles of Penguin, and until Shobhade came along, there was no other kind of book. There was only Padmaja Deshpandey's Death Day, Birthday, Nisha Dapunya's deeply sad stories. What was it called? I forgot. Set My Heart in Aspic or whatever. So, and when Shobhade was launched, she was launched as the same kind of book. There was no change in format. There was no indication that this was a different kind of book. So naturally, she got time. She got a really bad time with reviewers because every reviewer in this country also wants to be a literary fiction writer. They don't want to be pulp fiction writers. So John Ruskin's famous saying that let he who likes detective fiction review detective fiction is ignored. Because our reviewers largely want masala. They want savage reviews that will irritate and upset people, etc., etc. They will send you a book by a person you don't like, or who has reviewed you badly, so you can take your badla. Yeah? The result is the reader is not served. You may get a spicy books page, but the reader is not served. So I think if we confront the fact that all of us want to be upper class, upper caste, and very few of us want to dirty our hands, then you'll understand why genre is such a bad word here. Why the people who write chick lit, for instance, will say things like, I'm not a chick lit writer. Why I sat with writers who said, I'm not a crime writer. Then what are you doing at Crime Writers Festival or not? But okay, you write on the dark side, yada, yada, yada. Why are we hedging this around? Because India is not alone in this attitude that literary fiction is the jewel in the diadem and everything else, is kind of like Ghatia and this thing. So, do I particularly see myself as a crime writer when I'm writing a crime fiction? Yes, I do.
But is there, there are, you could argue, some of the best ones that stay with you, but they're also literary. And so when those two come together, that really is the most rewarding. And so, I would you talk about that such a book as India or not? In my opinion, I will.
See, two kinds that have managed to transcend this sort of this barrier. One is the In Cold Blood, Truman Capote and John Berendt, Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil, Ellen Barry, people who've written deeply researched non-fiction accounts. The reason why that can't happen in India is because, frankly, no one has that kind of money in publishing to give you 2 years worth of livelihood. To say, okay, Charlie, here's 50,000 rupees a month, go and live in that town for 2 years and investigate it so thoroughly that you know everybody in the cast of characters, and then come back and write your book for another 1 year, another 50,000 rupees every month, and then sell the book. Because the market is not mature enough to take that kind of advance and then pricing, and it just won't work. So we can't, we don't have a tradition of even magazines that support long-form journalism with the kind of money that they should, so that you can take 2 or 3 months and just focus on doing one long-form story, which the New Yorker does, which Vanity Fair does, which Esquire does. So it's another ball game on that side of the pond. And then in the middle of the pond there is the British ladies, and the British ladies like Dame Ruth Rendell and P.D. James, who write these elegant investigative novels which also have literary qualities, which means they are finely written. So it is very clear that when you're buying a P.D. James, except for Children of Men, which was a kind of like one of those books that she wrote, it's a kind of book on fertility and the lack of fertility, kind of like a dystopic novel. When you're buying a P.D. James, you are sure there will be a dead body by page 10. Aaron Dalglish will come in by page 20. By page 30, the Sokos will be investigating. By page 50, the first clue will arrive. You know this. But the texture of the writing, the fineness of the writing, raises it into literary fiction. Now, are these valid genres in a postmodern age? No. There is no validity anymore in good, bad, and indifferent. Barthes, Saunders, Derrida, Lacan, all of them work hard at creating a new Brahmanism of non-Brahmins. So there is a new non-hierarchy of hierarchies. So therefore, the trio are obviously in their own way constructing another literary godhead. But this literary godhead is out of saying there are no literary godheads. It's like Susan Sontag saying, writing against interpretation, but interpreting against interpretation. So this whole question of what is good, what is bad, has to be now laid, and I'm sorry to say this, in your lap, dear reader. It's a great book if you come to the book and make it a great book. If this book, which I may think is ghatiya and porn-like, speaks to your heart, it has become a great book. What does that mean for prizes? That they are farces. What does that mean for bestseller lists? They are manipulated. Understand this, know this, go out, pick up a book, open it, sniff,
You have
smell.
made some very bad writers very happy this
Yeah, that's all right. I mean, personally, I don't think there is anything noble or sacred about reading or writing. It's one of the many choices that you make in the world. So if you're patting yourself on the back because you're a reader, you have not done anything wonderful. You're just responding to who you are. You're just doing it because you like it, and that's fine. And if you're laughing at someone who's not a reader, then you should be laughed at. Because non-readers are not necessarily worse than readers. I mean, there's humanity in all of us. And there's, a book eventually is like Velcro, right? Your head is like full of little twink circles. And every book has a hook. Some books, their hook fits your circle so effortlessly that when you bought it, you think, I can't ever give you again. I may never give you again, but I won't give you again. Because your mind hooked. And then some that slip through your circle, that slip out again. So you read it, then you finish with it, and you say, this can go. Someone else can read it. And the third book, you start reading it 10 times because your best friend told you it's a wonderful book and said you must read it, you must read it. You started it 10 times and 10 times you have failed. That's not fitting your circle. This doesn't make your circle better or worse than anyone else's. It's just go read the books you want and make the decisions you want. And by all means, join the Brahmins. Right now, what has happened is that everyone wants to be a reviewer. Before, only a few people got to review books and they were book reviewers. Now with blogs and Facebook and social media, you can say exactly what you want and people will say like and dislike and follow you and buy you and whatnot. This is only a desire to rule someone else's taste, which gives you no right to actually rule someone else's taste. You have no business. I may have read 200 books last year, that still doesn't give me a right to tell you what to read next week. You should be making of that decision, and you should be making it by going and reading books, like tasting at the buffet. That every bookshop is a buffet. You can open a book and read 5 pages and think, hey, this is something I want to take home. And you read another 5 pages and think, itchy, I thought, pepper like. But that itchy, I thought means someone else might read it and think, it's wonderful. Just trust yourself. And trust, eventually, I trust you, that you will find sense. This imaginary hierarchy, you will make a hierarchy of your own, because this is what we do. We always make hierarchies. And you will think some books are better than others, and you will construct people who are the best writers of all time. We all make our lists of best writers, best authors, best books. There's a time in this. Why are we doing that? We're doing that because we want to validate our own choices.
Tell me your best crime books. Then we will take a few questions.
Okay. So my best crime books, obviously, that for instance, when I first read Sophocles and I thought, my God, he's writing a crime novel. He's actually writing a crime novel. This is like the original crime novel. Then, certainly, old Agatha Christie, how is it that someone who's writing about dead people gives you so much comfort? Old Colonel Bamford walking down the street, muttering to himself. I've never lived in a village like that. I've never seen a village like that. I don't know what a song is, but it's so joyous and comforting. Because the enemy has an outpost in my head. Britain still telling me how to do it. I enjoy very much like really hard-boiled, dark, noir things. There's stuff called Bachs, Bachhs, okay, with Bell and people like that, and some deep part of America where they all beleaguered and they go out and kill people and nothing ever happens. Everyone kills everybody else and nothing ever happens. And I enjoy Lee Child quite tremendously because Lee Child is what you want to be. You want to be and here's a flash day. This is what every man wants to be. An unencumbered human being. With every time his shirt is dirty, he takes it off and throws it out and buys a new shirt and puts it on. Every time his pant is dirty, he takes off his pant, throws it out, puts on a new pant and goes to another part of the country. He has no bank account, he has no address. This is what we all want to be. Which is why there are so many literary fictions accounts of men who walked away from their lives. Because every man has a secret desire to walk away from his lives and his life and the responsibility he has. And men are sort of looking uncomfortable and sort of twitchy, so I'm going to let that go. So I actually am omnivorous. Josephine K, great favorite. Gervais Penn, Oh My Dear Paws, great favorite. Michael Dibdin, great favorite. Donna Leon, great favorite. Harkin Nesa, great favorite. Miss Villa, Stealing for Snow, great favorite. I read crime fiction like a guilty secret.
Or someone who would like Patricia Highsmith.
Patricia Highsmith, my God, the talent.
What is she?
Patricia Highsmith, first of all, I don't think she existed actually. Because she's kind of like a myth. Whatever she turned out beautifully. You don't know too much about her. She's like Mr. Ripley actually. She could be anybody. When she's writing her spy thrillers, she's a fabulous spy. Personally, I don't think like John Le Carré or Graham Greene or any of those other people who wrote the magnificent spy thrillers, she was ever in the espionage business. But she gets them bang on. And when she writes her crime novels, she's some people you just have to say, these are goddesses. And what? Goddesses almost always are women. No, goddesses are women. Sorry, that was really bad. No, what do you say? So it seems like a male goddess. Actually, a male goddess would be a lot. That's a nice side. Yeah. So I'm saying, when you look at this, I believe that most of the murders committed in the universe, or at least in humanity, are men killing people. Most of the literary murders are women killing people. So I think women actually just work it out by writing a juicy book about it, and men actually go and kill people and then try and burn the body unsuccessfully. So I'm also absolutely fascinated how you can stop a conversation by adding one small insignificant detail about a current murder that is happening. So there's a murder in the newspapers and you say, Chandrama actually was wearing a batik blouse. And everyone turns to you as if you just told them the grand unifying theory and they say, batik blouse? Really? Who told you? And you say, I have my sources. You can say anything you want that people will be like, what in company we have a phrase called boca aberta, which means open mouthed. When you're really hungry, you're boca aberta. So the boca aberta to listen for any kind of small little detail, and it is not, let me tell you, the media's fault that they report these crimes so deeply. It is people's fault. It is the readers. Readers lack this stuff up. When I joined journalism, there was one crime reporter or two. Now there are 7 to 9 crime reporters on every newspaper and they can barely keep up. Every newspaper has one Khabri informant in every major police station who rings them up and they will say Kai Vishesh, which means is there anything interesting, and that informant will tell them and will pass on, by the way, your entire FIR. If you are not worried about the state of security in India, the state of your privacy, start now. Everything goes to the press. So when there was a Tata Institute of Social Sciences student who was gang raped, her entire FIR was put out by the Mumbai Mirror. The whole thing, every detail and thing that she had told the police was put out by the Mirror. No one was bothered. Not one feminist group of 8 women went outside and held up slogans. No one covered that. So in our deep yearning to know about all these murders, we construct the world we live in. It is not the media who is doing this on their own. Because long ago, with the death of, okay, so why didn't we have crime fiction? Because we didn't want, because at that time publishers, newspaper editors felt they were in charge of your sensibilities. They had to determine what kind of person you would grow up to be, and so they gave you things that would make you into a good human being. Today we are interactive. We ask the reader what does the reader want, and we give the reader that which they want. It's called marketing. Now you are being given what you want, and unfortunately what you want appeals to your lower self, and therefore you will get large quantities. Now you can't go and blame the people who are serving it. It's like you ordered this up, now eat it. If you don't like it, that's a different matter. But if you don't like it, what did you do about not liking it?
Should we open up? If anybody has questions, we have just about 5 minutes left. No?
Okay. Sorry, I battered you into submission. Books outside Bible. Oh, there's one in the back.
You say that you take a book, smell a book. In this electronic media, you are saying so.
Okay.
The statistics show that this generation, reading books generation, is on a decline. So, how do you expect this?
Okay, I get your question. One, I think words, whether they are in paper or they are on a screen, are still words and still have magic. Second, if young people are not reading, well, sucks to them. I'm not going to go to every young person and say, hey, baby, please read book. It will do you good. A young person who is not reading, I say, I have a dog in a dish. I got lots of fun reading. But I will tell you one thing, which I believe very strongly. The power of the story will die when the power of gossip dies. Gossip is the lowest form of literature. It is the story that you hear, and as soon as when anybody meets me after a while, they say, hey, you got any goss? I mean, no, actually, I don't have any goss, but really the desire to know just who is sleeping with who in the office is alive and well. And as long as that is alive and well, the story will be alive and well. Some people will transcend gossip and go on to reading books. Some people will transcend gossip and go on to seeing films. Some people will transcend gossip and go on to reading blogs. Some people will read poetry. Somehow, in whatever way, you will make connection with the story. You will make a connection with the story because we cannot live without stories. It would be nice if you made a connection with the paper story because then mere ko paisa milta hai. But if you make a connection with some other kind of story, with film, with television, but you bring rigor to it, you bring intensity to it, you bring attention to it, you're going to benefit from that story. If you bring a kind of excite me, interest me, then you go and see Masti Zade or whatever, and you come and say about the cat. Now that's you, I can't help you, I'm happy that you're seeing Masti Zade and you're taking it, you're having your fun there. I'm hoping that there will still be people who will have their fun in another way. And if you're one of them, that'll be nice. If you're not one of them, I hope you're having fun. I am.
No, see, the book fair is on, and I was there yesterday. And the crowds many young people. So that is very heartening. So I'm not, I mean, I always think that people who read books, and especially people who bought books, were historically always in a minority. So I don't think that is new. And we also tend to, we think that everybody is moved online. This is what they do with their phones and with their iPads and whatever not doing. Because that's what we see. I think we don't realize that there are many young people who buy books, read them. Things are safe, things are okay. I don't think that.
So I will say one last thing. If you have a phone, an expensive phone, don't take it to the loo. But you can take a book. Yeah, you want quick question.
As you just pointed out that today's media is acting irresponsibly and
I said irresponsibly. I said insensibly also.
Not literally, but
I suggested it. That's all. Then you said.
My question is that how we people can inculcate the culture of
very straightforwardly, editors take letters to the editor very seriously. They look at them carefully, especially if they are well argued and well reasoned critiques. If you don't like what's going on, write to your editor. Write to the editor of your paper. Vote with your wallet. Go look for a paper that suits you. Go look for a paper that suits what you. Don't go with the paper that your daddy read because your daddy read it and because it's coming into the house. Get the paper that you like. Choose, be an active, involved person in the and construct the media with the media world. The media world is not it sits there imagining that you like all this stuff and keeps handing it out because no one says, I'm sick. Is there nothing else happening in the world other than Indrani and Peter? Right? So, but as long as people are all sitting dogs and saying, can you imagine she did that and then she took that and she went there with that on the that? Oh! Your average journalist is mandlaving around this group and saying, oh, they like this shit. Give them some more tomorrow. Figure out some more shit to give them and deliver it to you. And then, of course, meanwhile, if your internet is being taken away from you by Facebook, if your security is being invaded by CCTV cameras, no one is talking about that. If people are dying because of malnutrition, no one is talking about that. Happy, happy, happy. Let's all focus on Indra.
Thank you, Mr. Jayapetru and Mr. Ravi Singh, for this session. Ladies and gentlemen, in our next session, the short ride, the long death of Abhishek Kalwar, we have Mr. Ravi Singh, an independent journalist who has been a reporter and editor for 25 years, and Ms. Sonia Singh, the editorial director of NDTV, in conversation with criminal lawyer Ms. Niharika Rajawala. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Ravi Singh and Ms. Sonia Singh in conversation with Ms. Niharika Rajawala.
I'm not in charge. Good morning, thank you so much for joining us. So I'm very excited about our panel today because out on the stage there's over 50 years of journalistic experience combined. So let me just introduce our speakers. First, on my left is Mr. Abir Hussain. He's recently, you know him best as a writer of the best-selling book Arushi on the Arushi Talwar case. Additionally, he's been in journalism for 25 years and he's done both print and broadcast media. His first encounter with the Talwar case was when he was covering it for Mumbai Mirror, and he was there on a day-to-day basis, during which he decided to do this, to write this book. Sonia Singh will be joining us as well in a few minutes. She also has over 20 years of journalistic experience. She is the editorial director of NDTV as well as the president of the ethics committee, and she's anchored many award-winning shows including India Decides, Your Call and Verdict. She had a very interesting first encounter with this matter. She did the first interview with Nupur Talwar on the 23rd of May 2008 after Rajesh Talwar was initially arrested. This is an interview which many people have felt marked a turning point in the general public's outlook towards the case and towards the Talwar. So she'll be joining us in just a few minutes and we'll start with Aviru. So Aviru, like I was saying, you started this case as a reporter for Mumbai Mirror and you were there at the trial at this day. Right? Writing this book was a huge commitment because it was a big investment both in times of, both in matters of time and effort, wasn't it? And initially, you wouldn't have known the kind of information you were able to uncover. So was there a particular time during trial that you decided that you wanted to go all the way and write this book?
Actually, no one particular time. First of all, thank you everyone for coming. It's a great venue for an intimate, quiet literature festival. To back to your question, the thing about this case was that, am I audible? Should it speak louder? Yeah? Is this better? So, the thing about this case is that, firstly, I knew almost nothing about it when I entered, the fray to cover it for the Mirror. That to me was an advantage of some sort, because a narrative had already been written, and I think in the court of public opinion, well before the trial even began, in the court of public opinion, the Talwars had been convicted. So it was seen by most people as an open and shut trial. And I frankly thought that my will be with the Mirror as well last maybe a month. However, when I ended up covering it on a day-to-day basis, I found, well, if it is such an open and shut case, then why isn't the evidence being presented that way? Why are there so many manipulations? Why are there so many lies being told? Why is there so much fraud going on? And why is there so much focus on things like conduct? And we'll probably come to that a little later. Rather than evidence. It made me question what was going on in the court. And actually, it's through those questions that I wrote my pieces for the Mirror. And at the end of every day of reporting, I find that I had even more questions. It's not possible to answer all of them in one day. So by the end of it, at the end of a year and a half, I had hundreds of more questions to ask myself. So in one sense, I got sucked into it. So even after the trial was over and the Talwars were convicted, I sort of soldiered on for a year to produce the book. Now, the book itself was not my idea. I had a very fine editor, Chiki Sarkar, at Penguin, who happened to have followed the Mirror columns. And she said, look, you need to work on a book on this. And she didn't mean merely a collection of the newspaper reports. When she said book, she meant book. It was quite serious and I mean, I'm extremely pushy. So I'm a lazy fellow, so I knew that. So really from my side, apart from a genuine interest, I didn't see, any other, I mean, I didn't see it as commitment of time or anything like that. I actually enjoyed it. Sometimes the forensic nature of it, and other times just the life in court. See, for most of us, a lower court is an abstraction. We don't know how it really works because we haven't been there. Not even many journalists go there, frankly. So, what it looks like, what it feels like, who's around, what are they doing. That's the kind of life that we never expose ourselves to in some ways. And because it's an abstraction, we depend on, I think, mainstream sort of film or television to give us cues as to what those places are like. But for me, this was a film playing out before my eyes every day. And in some ways, it was irresistible with all its grime and its black humor. And the head-shaking nature of the system itself. So there were many things that went into writing this book, many motivations.
Can you imagine? And I'm sure a large number in our audience has read your book and understands.
I hope so.
I hope so too, but if they haven't, an opportunity for you. And they would know the depth of your interviews and the extent of the information you were able to bring to life that at first was not available to the general public. Perhaps wasn't even available out of court records and wasn't available in the general flow at all. It must have been very difficult while interviewing people who were already so intimately involved in the case to get them to trust you and open up to you and tell you the truth about things. Can you tell us something about your experience?
See, getting information is, you can describe it as hard work and very painful and all of that. But as a journalist, I regard that as my job. And I can't complain as a bus driver that it's really hard to drive a bus. The same applies where journalism is concerned. We're supposed to be doing this in the first place. If you're not, there's something wrong. In terms of gaining the trust of people, I think you're referring to some of the players in this who maybe are slightly on the wrong side of the law themselves in this case. For instance, the judge himself or some of the investigators who took part in this, I would say, miscarriage of justice. With any human being, and I found this is not some journalistic experience. With any human being, I think if you're able to communicate to them that you are serious and that overall you are sympathetic. By sympathetic, it doesn't. I mean that in the secular sense of the word sympathetic. I don't mean it. I'm on your side. But that if you're able to communicate to them that you be fair and that you are serious about the work you're doing, you don't want to be frivolous about it, and that it's important to you, and communicate to them humbly that their participation is also important to you, and make them see that their participation is also beneficial to them in some ways. It's a long list, but the thing is you have to start and you have to try. In the case of Judge Shamlal, for instance, well, this is not to say you don't use tactics. An understanding of human nature is important. I understood quite well that this particular judge who ruled, who convicted Talwar's life, was also someone who was extremely self-involved. It was apparent to me through a year and a half of watching him in court, and that he saw this judgment that he wrote as his legacy. That's how he wanted to ride into the sunset. So I guess, tactically one can tell him, ask him, what are your motivations? what will you write? Something this grand. You begin there and then see where it takes you. That's how it works.
And I love the point you made about how you have to reinforce the sympathetic aspect of it. If you want people to relate to you, and one thing that did occur to me was the cover of the book, though very minimal, is very impactful. I remember when I handed it to my mother, she shuddered a little bit and said, all the droplets of that. And you entitled it simply Arushi. And I, at least personally, always felt that Arushi Talwar, the person, got a little lost and caught up in Arushi Talwar, the concept and the case, and became more just a theoretical tragedy than a flesh and blood person. I know the family always, when they give interviews, reinforces the fact that this is her nature, this is who she was, this is what she was. Did that have any bearing on the way you designed the cover and decided to present it?
Firstly, I didn't design the cover, and opinion is divided on whether it's appropriate or not, whether it works or not. I've heard all kinds of views on this. I personally don't have a strong view one way or the other. As far as I can get at, I have been a headline writer at one point in time, and I felt that that's the most direct way into the story. So really the idea of the headline is not, there is no, or there was no thought of some serious underlying meaning and stuff like that. It was much more just a direct approach to what will make people think of this case fastest. And that word was Arushi. Your content, your book, can actually address the kind of questions that you were raising, which is that, make her a person rather than. You see, the thing about Arushi is that she was 13. So I'll tell you a story. When Nupur Talwar went to jail, one of the first things that other female convicts asked her is that, or told her, is that, ma'am, you look quite young to have had a 25-year-old daughter. So she said, but no, my daughter was just 13. So in some ways, the portrayal of, hi Sonia, nice to see you. Just build up more else. So I'm just to continue the story. In some ways, post her murder, in a space of 2 or 3 years, Arushi's age had doubled in the eyes of a number of people. The reason for that is obvious, that she was cast as a woman who was sexually active, perhaps even promiscuous. And this is the narrative that people began to believe. To believe that of a 13-year-old is much harder. Therefore, subliminally, people who don't know the facts thought of her as much older. That's the kind of transformation or impact that this case, the way it was handled, had on the people directly involved in them, including those who were impacted.
So actually, I didn't know the story about Nupur, which was interesting. Let's get Sonia involved here. So Sonia, I was saying that you have a very unique perspective on this because you had the first interview with Nupur after Rajesh Kumar was arrested. And that people feel was a very impactful interview because it really influenced the general public's perception because it was essentially the first time she was speaking out. Can you tell us something about that experience and the atmosphere in the studio? Because I know you've recently also written an article saying the general public's perception is wrong and that she did cry and she did cry. Can you tell us something about that?
Sure, thanks, Niharika. Hi, Avyur. And sorry I was a bit late, but I think this odd even traffic being back to normal this Sunday was crazy. I've come from a wedding in Gurgaon, that's why I'm a tad overdressed for a Crime Writers Festival. But just to go back to my normal route, and I mean, it was interesting actually what you were saying about Arushi being cast as an adult, because in the newsrooms, the first pictures of Arushi which came were actually a school passport picture photograph, where she actually, I think it was about 9 or 10. So in that sense, I think why NDTV, and I had just become editor, I think, about a few months for the Avishik case. I think why our coverage was slightly different was because for us, this is the murder of a child. And every day the story was becoming more bizarre because we all fell into the trap, of course, of thinking that the help had done it. So it was like almost like the butler did it. It was presumed that when the news first came in, our reporter said, oh, this young girl murdered, the help is missing. And we said, oh, the help didn't. Everybody was very self-righteous about how people don't verify their help, and if they had done that, they would have saved this. But then within about 1 or 2 days, the narrative is becoming very different. And our crime reporters kept coming back and saying, the police are giving us these very strange off-the-record stories, and they won't go on record with it, but they keep hinting that there was something sexual involved in this case, and there's something murky, and the father's behavior is very odd, etc. And we were saying that we've seen the visuals, and the father had broken down when the girl died, and what did the police want the father to do? And they said, no, they're saying, why did they go to Hardwar at X time as opposed to X time? And every time we would be questioned by actors saying, but that makes no sense, that's not a theory, but they're saying the police have told us this. And I think just about a few, so the next day we did a story where we got a police person, and we got, I think, an uncle of Avishik's, Dinesh, who then I think is now the backbone of the fight against it. He came on because he said the family are just too rapid to speak, so they came on, and Dinesh kept asking this policeman, why don't you tell us, if you think we're not, what is the evidence you have? We are completely, the family just been shut out of what's happening. The policeman refused to answer, and I think 24 hours later, Avishik's father was arrested. And then I got a call at that time from, I think, Dinesh only, and he said that, would you like to interview Nupur? And I said, yes, I think this was quite early in the morning. I said, yes. He said, but the only problem is, we can't leave the house because we are not being allowed to. And I said, by the police. And he said, no, by the media. So I said, the media is not allowing you to leave the house means what? He said, because there are 20 OB vans outside our house, and if we go outside, they basically just start shouting, so we quickly come back inside. So I said, well, look, just get into the car and drive, and I don't think anyone stopped you. And then anyway, they got into the car. There was apparently a nightmarish experience because they had vans actually had to drive them off the road because they had some, that they're going to another studio. So I think there's a whole separate commentary on the kind of crazy TRP race it's done. Anyway, Nupur arrived, and that's the first time in my life I met her. Like, a lot of people said, oh, you must be knowing her, so sympathetic. I've never met her before in my life. So she was just like this zombie. It was just like, I think this is the first time I met somebody who lost a daughter to tragic place. I wasn't sure about her. She was just like a zombie. She wasn't looking or making any eye contact. And she had a lawyer with her and another doctor friend and Dinesh. So the lawyer was very wary about what she should actually say. She shouldn't say this and she shouldn't say that. And she just kept nodding, and she said, I'll just say whatever you ask me. So we went into the studio, and then, I asked her question, and she just started talking. Just like she was dying to talk to someone who perhaps is not a family member or something. So she just talked, and I felt that she was holding herself together by a thread. She just seemed like somebody who was almost not sane anymore in that sense. She was in a completely different zone. She talked, and she gave her various answers. And in fact, even about Hemraj, we talked, she said, Hemraj was like the older person in the house. He's the one we trusted. So she said, my initial reaction was not Hemraj, because I would never thought he could have done that. And she said, the day after she died, he was very happy. He told me that baby ne palak paneer khaya hai. Because she never used to eat paneer or something of the sort, never had palak. And she was very happy with that day. She ate it, so he was very happy. So she said, I could never imagine that he was not a safe person. And anyway, the interview finished, and then literally as soon as the cameras went off, she broke down. She wept and wept.
Yeah, you said in your recent article that her mistake was that she didn't cry on camera, and my mistake was that I didn't keep the cameras running. Did you realize at the time that you had an inkling that this interview might garner this kind of response? Because it was heavily misunderstood, but public wasn't it?
No, in fact, it actually quite recently when I realized how much was misunderstood, because I was interviewing the Talwar cast and crew, which was Meghna Gulzar and Konkana, etc. And they told this to me that we were doing our research this, and I said, well, I asked them, I said, why would that make a difference? And they made that point because we expect like a Hindi film, Morning Mother, who would be weeping and beating her breast, and she didn't fit that perception. But when I interviewed her, I got a sense of a deeply grieving woman.
Is that why you chose to write this article now? Because Meghna Gulzar in this interview brought to light that this might be the reaction. Is that why you chose to write this article now?
Well, earlier when people used to ask me or whatever, and I think at the time the interview, it wasn't Twitter, etc., was not so much, was not active. So my initial reaction to the interview, many people said it was very positive, that they also was very dignified. But if you meet one of people and say, Acha, Roya, and then say, no, she did fine, well, end it there.
Right.
But then it was such a grave misperception, I thought it was a good time to correct it.
I agree. So my next question is for both of you actually, because you both have such heady experience in journalism. Avirok had said in his interview with Month in India that a lot of people ask him why Arushi, as in why he took this cause up. But in a slightly bigger picture, that is also a relevant question. What do you think it is that makes a case catch the public's eye so heavily and causes such an explosive outcry?
I think there's always a voyeuristic tendency to it. There's always also this kind of thing that somehow, thank God it happened to them and not me. So you tend to see that it's an English news viewing audience or a mid-class Hindi news viewing audience. These are people who they know, they are neighbors of, etc. So even the Sheila Bora case often, you'll find that people almost get a vicarious pleasure in something happening to a milieu they identify with, and then they also feel somehow elevated by the fact that it happened to them.
That's very true actually, because Brown University conducted a very interesting experiment. I'm sorry. Had conducted a very interesting experiment on victim blaming and sexual offences, and they found that a larger percentage of women tend to blame the victim than men do. And they found that the reason for this was probably a survival instinct, that you want to mentally distance oneself from it, saying we are different from that situation, that's why that would never happen to me, which is probably also lies in that. Avirok also did a very interesting experiment at the General School of Law with regards to your interview. Avirok, can you tell us about?
Yeah. Well, just a couple of things. I mean, there was a second point about why Arushi. I mean, why this case got. You see, it goes beyond, I think, further beyond just how we are as Indian society, middle class conservative Indian society, and this fascination, if you will, for anything that has the aroma of sex, and some kind of pleasure in that. There's something more visceral about this case, which is a very polarizing discussion wherever you have it, and that is, can the parents of a child murder their own child or not? This is a discussion that can be had across the world. It's universal. So it's a very powerful debating point, a very polarizing one as well. The polarization in this case partly happened. None of it is being, I'm as much of the media as you are, Sonia, so this is not an attack on one channel or whatever. I think we all are responsible for it, including the consumers in media. So I was going to experiment on the power of television, or the visual. And what I did is I took a talk at a law university. I took just the audio of Sonia's interview and I played it to that audience. And then I asked them same questions. So what do you think? I mean, do you think this person is crying? Do you think there's grief in her voice, or do you think he's telling the truth? Questions like this. The distribution of answers was quite diverse. People thought many different things. Whereas, in the case of that interview, unfortunately, if you go through the comment section till now on that YouTube post, it's overwhelmingly that a person who does not cry must necessarily be guilty. This is suspension of nationality, because the understanding or the grasp that one must have on something like different people grieve differently seems to me quite a simple one. Unfortunately, it's not there. Sad. But once I did that experiment, I think the audience there at least realized that if you have a visual to go over that voice, it's somehow embossed. I'll give you another example which follows from this one. If you remember, Sonia, and your channel did just giving interviews and everybody else, Peter Mukherjee, when he was first being interviewed for in connection with his ghastly other murders, never appeared on television. All he did was offer telephone interviews. He was, I'd say, being well advised by somebody who knew the effect that can have, and the effect that can have, the disastrous, tragic consequences of that, is nowhere more apparent than in the Irish case. I'm just talking about the power of that visual.
The one thing I'd like to slightly differ with the Open, we have to be very careful that perception cannot be reality. I think that almost Macabre thing was, after the Irish interview and Nukur's interview initially, everything seemed to be actually going their way, because in fact it was after that that Vijay Shankar and Arun Kumar had that whole press conference, and they said that Krishna said that, and everyone then got off. So at that time, when you said it right earlier, she almost seemed vindicated. So
I know you, all of us walk a fine line where this is concerned.
No, but I'm just, so oddly enough, and actually, and you must have as well, both CBI directors in the case have completely diametrically opposite views. One is convinced of innocence and one is convinced of their guilt. So it's actually become such a complex issue because the same facts are interpreted completely differently by the two. Exactly. So it's even stranger how that, because at that time, in fact, I think even Arsh's family was quite happy with the interview because they thought that they got off, everything was okay.
Yes, and the trouble is, it wasn't. It's not about the influence that interview may have had or not had on the investigators. They're only part of it. It's actually the phrase I mentioned at the top of this, which is what is probability. What happens there? What's the perception there? That is what, that's the tricky part lay there in this case, rather than in how the case went itself. If there's already a cemented belief that these people are guilty in the public mind, it is that much easier for investigators to follow that, and that much easier for the judge to convict them, because they, in one sense, reinforce what the public thinks. There's a great disincentive to mitigate against that target, if you will. Yeah.
One very good point to be developed is that the people want to believe a particular version of things. I think even Jerry Pinto was saying something of like in the session earlier, that the news sometimes feels, it's a duality. For certain aspects of the news feel compelled to give the people what they want to get ratings, and to a certain extent the general public will simply take what they want from an interview, whether seeing it objectively or subjectively. You made a very interesting comment again at Manthan India about how Avirup had said, if I were to be asked who understands society best, I wouldn't say it was any great sociologist. I would say it's Ekta Kapoor.
She's a very great sociologist.
Yes. But it's entertainment television really knows how to give.
So yeah, I mean, one of the things that I found interesting about television, I have had a brief career there as well, but is with the advent of the case serials in the mid-90s and late 90s and early 2000s, what happened is the TRP game that you talked about, that was one hands down by a certain kind of formula, which is not very difficult to spot. That formula, I think, and that's why I called Mr. Kapoor a genius and a fantastic social scientist, is that middle class Indians are essentially conservative, and that if you can project that belief system through what you do on television, then you really are extending the size of their drawing room, and they are hooked onto you. Now, television, I mean, Sonia will know this much better than me, she's been around in that business for much longer, but it became extremely competitive. News television became extremely competitive. There was an explosion of the numbers of channels, good and bad, let's not go there. But the rush that TRPs gave you or whatever, even though I should point out that English news television forms a minuscule part of the viewership of television itself. It does. It's impactful, important, but in terms of viewership, The deal here was that news television, and I'd say especially vernacular news television, took some of those cues from entertainment. And they were able to, I think, insinuate some of those values into how at least they treated the story. So stories became more about what you might want to believe rather than what they really were. So this is how there was an osmosis of one sort into, from entertainment views, and it's crept in, there's no doubt about it. You would have found that the flavors may change. That in the beginning there was a lot of toothpaste. Right now there is a lot of Babaji. And this creeps into the reporting of even crime. So the value sets that you might want to subscribe to, or you think are good, such as, say, alcohol is bad, don't drink. Dr. Dalwar threw parties. So immediately is cast in a certain way. The orgies and wife swapping. Swingers. Yeah. So these are really people who, as middle class Indians, we would like to keep at a distance. I mean, we don't want them to be part of our social set. And it is much, much easier for us to believe that they are perpetrators of any crime than it is to believe, an upstanding modern citizen side, like say, Raya.
Very true. And
You said very true, sir. Raya is the model there, yes.
I'm glad you brought that up because while there were,
There is a modern citizen?
I am his biggest fan. But I'm glad you brought up the different kinds of coverage there were in the different languages that was also portrayed in. So in a country like India, that's a very significant thing. While there were channels and journalists like you and Sonia who were trying to get the family story out there and trying to get the true facts of the case out there, there were also a lot of outfits that were basically in it for the ratings, right? When you have headlines to the extent of Baap Ka Paap and Dr. Death of his house and his house of horrors, those are exceedingly provocative headlines that are trying to get a particular reaction out of people. And if you remember, the latter was actually very early on when Dr. Dalwar was arrested for the first time. So I mean,
That's the publication.
I don't know.
Stands in.
Oh, but I didn't recall that. But
Death in the house of horror, who stands in?
yeah,
So, I mean,
I will
it's okay. If you want to headline something that way, I'm fine with it.
aside from that, actually,
But
if we're taking
back it
names,
up. Back it up with something substantive.
and if we're taking names, actually, I believe, I hope I'm not mistaken, it was, I think it was India Today magazine that published photos of the crime scene and published photos of Archie Dalwar without being censored, which is
So that's not appropriate to comment here.
No, but it was, no, I was actually so clear when you said actually, again, go back to the broadcast of Vishal Bhardwaj, we all know Shakespeare drama, and I was like, why did you pick this case? Because I mean, after all, it is a case about the young murder, why did you think you would make a movie? And he said, because nowadays, the plots we see in real life are much more fascinating than anything any scriptwriter comes up with. He said, forget Shakespeare and drama, here you had all the elements right here, happening in Noida, what was Greek, sort of Greek drama as it were, and he said, and he pointed out, so we look at the news, and this was something which was we should remember, he said the use of background music. He said when we use background music in movies, we do it because we want a certain emotion, it's planned. So when you're using background music in the news, you want the viewer to think a certain way, I mean that's why you're using it. So you have certain music to accompany, say a Dr. Dalwar or next, I mean it could be any case, I mean you're talking about the Sheena Bora case, show that as well. So the danger, I think, and this is really a danger, is of this fact and fiction lines becoming completely blurred and news television becoming almost like entertainment or movie television where we decide who the hero and the villains are. And I think you find that whether it's in politics, whether it's increasingly, I think this trend that that news is no more about being boring and giving both sides. It's about taking a stand. And for instance, I mean, we've seen this happen in cases when I think the hanging of Kasab or Afzal Guru, where you will have some channels saying we will not have people on who do not support this because we believe this is a patriotic channel or that is an anti-national channel. And I think that is something every citizen should be really aware of, that what you're watching is not, you should be watching someone else's opinion. I mean, you don't go by the fact, and I think that's become very blurred, whether it's social media, whether it's television, interestingly.
Sorry, there's something you said about TRPs, I think
Yeah, about the photographs.
about the photographs. So here's a piece of perhaps news for you, which is that your Nobutama interview was considered by some other chapters a coup.
I wish you almost rather work getting there.
Yeah, and in fact, and this I had in the form of an email from a former employee in a channel that informs the nation about everything. That there was at the time that the Times Now didn't get that interview, there was a decision taken on this that we will now look at the case in a slightly different way. Now, this sort of thing, once again, this is a suspension of rationality. You can't have it in the newsroom. Just because you don't get something doesn't mean you act out of spite. Or that can't be surely the motivation for for putting out anything. But I was surprised that the person, the former employee now said that's one reason why. But someone wrote this to me privately, I guess, but I can share it quite clearly that this is how it happened. The second thing that happened, and since we're talking with the media, is that Rajdeep, one of your old colleagues, often is asked why do cases like Arushi or the Ithari or whatever, something that happens in Delhi, why does that get so much coverage? And what about all the custodial deaths happening in, say, Imphal or wherever? Yeah. And he has a phrase for it, which he uses quite frequently. That's the tyranny of distance. In this case, I'll reverse that phrase. The Talwar suffered the tyranny of proximity. You see, all the television studios are based in Noida. So to throw resources at the story was really very easy. It was like parking the OB in a garage. So if you want it for something else, you can always have it. And then I think all of them are guilty in that sense, because everybody, they created a traffic jam. So it's.
Aside from that, it was also the job of the investigators to cordon off the crime scene. And the fact of the matter was, there were journalists.
No, sorry, go ahead.
There were journalists and regular citizens and everybody running amok all over the crime scene. Like the most detailed description of the crime scene in the police statements that I saw was of the vegetable vendor downstairs, who then very piously said, but I thought the whole thing was very distasteful, so I left. And out of the 26 fingerprints that they lifted from the entire scene, 24 were smudged, and 2 couldn't be traced to any of the individuals who were in the house. So it's also cumulatively, the journalists, I've always believed that journalists have a duty towards ethics, but the investigators also have a duty to keep people out.
No doubt. And actually, what the details are, the details are hundreds of thousands in this case, and we want to go on and on. But the main thing that you're referring to here is actually goes to the heart of this case. It is a shifting of the burden of proof for everything that happened around this crime onto the Talwars. This is what follows from not cordoning it off and then questioning how the house was cleaned, how certain articles were lifted, and all of that. So now the burden is very cleverly shifted. So someone doesn't do their job and then says, why did you do it? Why did you clean the crime scene then? You must have had something to hide. So this is a theme that runs, in fact, through the trial process. And the basic narrative of the CBI is this. You need to explain why you are not guilty. I'm just asking you the questions, but you need to explain why. And this to me reverses what's, I think, a civilization principle, and that is the presumption of innocence. In this case, not just with the investigation, in the trial and in the media, this very fundamental human principle was reversed. All the agencies involved, everyone involved, seemed to presume Talwar's guilty.
No,
Then it becomes very after that, yeah.
no, in fact, I actually think that just to make that point, because in that sense, the Arushi case represents the worst of what's going on in our system currently. Because, and ironically, I mean, we're of course in Delhi, so we talk about it, the privilege of it, but I remember we speaking to Nupur and she said, Sonia, the biggest regret I have around is also that we shifted to Noida. And they shifted to Noida to be near her grandmother after she was gone. And in fact, ironically, I don't think many people know because it was all over the lax care and stuff. I think Nupur was one of the most paranoid mothers. And she never left her daughter alone. She had her grandmothers all come to her dentist. So it's actually, you know, I always say, oh, she must have done this. So she never left her daughter alone. If they went out, she would be with them or she'd be left with the grandmothers in Noida. And that's why they shifted to Noida.
Like they always dropped and picked her up from school.
She didn't take a bus because, but being in Noida, when she came into the Uttar Pradesh police and legal system, and again when she came face to face with that, it was crazy because that's when you had, I mean, whatever you may tell the Delhi police, there is a level of professionalism which I think is the best in the country.
In addition to that, there was another thing that was widely misunderstood, which was the concept of the plywood divider between their rooms. And what people don't realize is the reason that wall was created was because until she was 8 years old, she slept in her parents' room. Then she started to sleep in her own room, but in case she needed them, they didn't want her to have to walk through the main hall. So they made a sliding door. It was about 4 inches thick. Then when she turned 13, she said, no, I want some privacy, this is not alright. So they had it boarded up and it had wood on each side. That was what was later termed the plywood divider that everyone was so shocked, you know, things.
So here's what led me to my head. I mean, it's specifically this one day. When council are arguing this side, one side is saying, you know, there's a brick wall there, and then there's plywood on top. The other side, no, it's just a flimsy piece of cardboard. Isn't it quite simple for the office, for the magistrate, to simply appoint any judicial officer to go and check exactly what it is? But this is not done. Instead, one of these competing narratives is taken as fact. This is what I find very strange about it. It happened yet again. Somebody was called a relative of the Talwars. That person is not a relative. Yeah? Now, because counsel didn't say that it is a lie to say that this person is a relative, the judge, when he wrote the judgment out, said that since counsel didn't say this, he must be a relative. Surely there are better ways of finding this out. I mean, it's common sense.
This judicial system again, so I mean, this goes much beyond the Arushi case, because Arushi case is one we know about. But what's it stemming from? The thousands of hundred trials in UP jails, I think this came about how fast a bail hearing come up, and you're like saying that she had to jump the case of others who've been waiting for 10 years to get bail hearing, so who has more of a right?
Now I'll, in a moment, I just have to open it up to questions. So since we've had a very intense debate, I wanted to end it on a light note. Avirok, I believe that you, like me, are a huge fan of Truman Capote. Did his book in Cold Blood have any influence on your decision to write this?
Oh, not just this book, it influenced many things. Just the idea of all the new journalists is fascinating to me, and the way that they did their journalism is, for me, you know, maybe slightly old school, but that is very inspirational. There's the idea of never being satisfied with what you've got and going back, repeatedly going back to your material or to your sources. I mean, I'm sure, I know television is much harder, sorry, but I'm sure that at base level, we want to do that about certain stories, and all of us are that. So, but for this book, actually, I mean, see, there's a difference between, this is not to compare myself with reporting, that would be a small mistake. This, in Cold Blood is the prosecution narrative, essentially the prosecution narrative. It has a story, the human story of the perpetrators, but it's essentially the prosecution narrative. This book is more an investigation of an investigation. So here the crimes are different in my view. The crimes are not merely the two murders that took place. The crimes are those the little ones that add up incrementally in investigation and trial, done in fact by those who are supposed to uphold the law. So it is a crime book in that sense, of that nature. It's not the prosecution.
So let's open it up to questions from the audience. Yes.
Hello sir, so out of your investigation of investigations, I have seen that Phil Talwar also that is not talking clearly about who is the killer. Can you say in one sentence who is the killer?
No.
There was talk in the court of public. This is an open question. There was talk in the court of public opinion, and in the opinion of the speakers of the panel, should the prosecutors be the media in that court of public opinion? Should the media promote or suppress a narrative and not simply represent a narrative, or should they only represent a narrative and not promote or suppress a narrative?
See, what I would like to say to this has a theoretical and a practical question answer. Now, theoretically, when something is either under investigation or under trial, the media aren't supposed to report at all as to what it is, because they don't want to do anything that influences the investigation one way or the other. However, practically what happens is, everybody continues to do this. Now, when you are in a competitive profession and 10 of your competitors are doing something and it's going to you often have no choice, and you also have a duty to your viewers to give them a clear view of what's going on. That being said, I feel certain ethical restrictions which are already there but are simply have to be enforced better ought to be put there to limit the press in their imagination.
I think what's happening in practice, and that question of balance is a very valid one, because I do find that. Because you find that especially nowadays, I think the police, CBI, whichever investigative agency, all have certain reporters to which they leak, and these leaks are virtually on record, because they're just like, the CBI says he did. And you'll find more and more often reporters in such a rush to get it on first. I mean, I'm sure a good editor will say that, what does the other side say, or what does the proof they say? Because then tomorrow if it turns out wrong, they're not liable because they've not said it on record, but they just got their version out there. I mean, I would recommend everybody should really make sure they have a good, almost a lawyer or virtually a PR who has their version of events up as well, because I think balance is key. And what happens is you often get one side of events and not the others. And I know that again, in this case, often people say, why be the parents? What about Krishna? What about the others? Who I think I had interviewed, other channels also did interview, but this point of balance, I think both channels, organizations have to really push that more. Because otherwise, even if it's saying report, why should she only get hurt? You have to have the other side of the story out as well.
In fact, when you said right now the manner in which they address, I wanted to quickly say that Amirok was actually talking about the Peter Mukherjee case in America, where they are far more attuned to public perception because of jury trials. Anyone accused of a crime immediately hires somebody to deal with PR, and somebody to tell them how to dress, how to present themselves, how to give statements. Do you want to say?
Well, I think question there.
Hello sir, mine would be not be a question but more of a compliment. Actually, in my personal opinion, I would think that the interview that you have mentioned of two persons, that is AGL Kaul and Judge Shamrar, because while I was reading the book all throughout, I had this question that, like, what would, at the end, kaise honge ye log and not. But I think your interview at the end of the book with both of these people, and the answer of Judge Shamrar that the judgment he had wrote, was how he was the MA in literature and how the judgment was more about that, and AGL Kaul's also more likely to stay in that same thing and how he closes other investigation giving certain particular angle.
Yes, and it's actually, it wasn't called one interview. It was a gentleman called Mr. Dahia, who is a doctor who is a private scientist. Thank you for that.
For a point of reference, if anyone else wants to compliment Amirok, please hang around here afterwards. Please feel free.
Yeah. No, I think it's been extremely good, the discussion, because we've covered a lot of points. But what I feel, Sonia, what you had mentioned about all this fictionalization of news, which never used to happen when I was a journalist. We never had I remember when they first put music on the news, I was so disturbed. I think that was around the time I said, I'm quitting, I can't take this anymore, you know? Yeah, you know, no, because, no, so my question is that in terms of the kind of investigation that is required in a case like this, I don't know whether television channels can really invest that kind of time and effort. Because you would be able to also do what, in a sense, what Abhiruk has done. But is that practical anymore? Can that happen?
It's rare. I think I have to say that, I was actually happy when a book came out. I was so glad someone went out there and finished all those loose ends which were just kind of left hanging. I think there was a great sense of dissatisfaction with the verdict. So it is rare, Ishwar. We try with this.
You can't do it for every case.
How many cases?
In a practical sense, that's not possible. One of the disciplines in this book is that every source is named. Everything is attributed. So now this, on a day-to-day 24-hour news cycle, I've been there myself, so I know it's well impossible to do. So it requires, I think, first of all, an investment of time in that sense, and as an editor, you would know this. You have to throw resources or distribute resources as best you can. You don't have these luxuries, if you will, you know. So, is it possible? Certainly, but not every case. It will have to be something that, she feels strongly about or some other editor feels strongly about. And, okay, look, here's a case in public interest. Let's throw out our weight behind it. Journalistically, not behind any one party, anyone involved.
But in this, it seems to be like a miscarriage of justice. This seems to be a strong opinion that seems to be coming through, that something has got lost.
But it's still somewhere in the legal system, like how do you go, can you challenge the court verdict? It was a rare when you managed to get that those records, those courts on record about how the verdict was actually stated before it says the last arguments. How do we challenge the judge? How do the contempt of court issue? Now it's in the legal process of now what's next? You have to have a bail hearing. That bail hearing will come out only when the time comes. In fact, they pressed parents for the argument. And they said, we kept on the case hasn't been heard in the Supreme Court for 2 years. So they said, you talk about fast track, and you had everybody on the street just now when that juvenile boy was being let off. But our case not been heard for 2 years in the Supreme Court. So forget about the glamour and the this and hang this one, and we said our case heard. What do you say to them?
I see someone putting their hand up, and I'm afraid we've really taken up more than the time allotted to us. So everyone is here, so you can catch hold of them personally and ask. Alright? Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you, great job. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Arvind Singh, Ms. Sonia Singh, and Ms. Niharika Rajawala. Thank you so much for the interesting session. Ladies and gentlemen, in our next and the last session of the day in Cold Blood, Mr. Piyush Shah, a critically acclaimed film director, filmmaker, and author, in conversation, authors accolade, explores the psychology of aliens and killers and the unsuccessful investigations into their crimes. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Piyush Shah. Mr. Piyush Shah's new book, Rakshas in Cold Blood, will be launched by Sunil Mashkar.
Naturally. She's Mrs. Sinha. This is Sinha. I said, journalist.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Piyush Shah, Mr. Zachary, and Mr. Sunil Mishra.
What is up? Hello. Please take your seats, and it's a great pleasure and honor to be sharing the stage with Sudhir Mishra, who is one of my absolute favorite filmmakers, as well as Piyush Jha, who is one of my favorite Indian crime novelists, and who's writing, I think, very significant for genre because he, for example, in his latest book, he's exploring the territory of the Indian serial killer, something that one hardly knew existed before, but the book actually proves. The book actually proves that there has been quite a lot of serial killer going on, and he tries to explore the mind of the serial killer. Basically, it's the serial killer's CV, you could say, the book, and describes the career of a particular serial killer who is made up, but bears resemblance to many real cases. First of all, I would ask Sudhir to launch the book formally, and we'll have and say a few words about the book, because this is actually the early release of Piyush's new book, Rakshas.
Thank you, and as they say, it gives me great pleasure to introduce this book and go ahead to release it and say, because I've known Piyush for a long time. I've known Piyush as a filmmaker and a writer, and he's one of the few who writes his own scripts. So I have produced one of them as well, a film called Sikandar, which he wrote himself. It's actually a Piyush that helped it along with. And I've always been struck by I mean, very few filmmakers can make this transition from novel to film to novel like that. There are other kind of transitions before, but I mean, this is, and I've always thought that Piyush, I mean, when later, I mean, I'm taking no credit for this transition at all, but you know, when later he did, it didn't come as too much of a surprise, and one thought that it's only natural because of the, you know, way he used to write those scripts. So a Piyush script could be read by itself. It could be, you know, without seeing a film, you know, you could see the progression, you could imagine the thing. Very few scripts can be read by itself, and then you get the idea of the film itself totally. So that was the case, and it's wonderful that since then he has redefined his career totally, and now known as the number one, almost, let's say, I don't know the statistics, but the crime writer, and so it gives me great pleasure to introduce the book and to release it. After that, we'll do a set of questions where I'll, you know, we'll banter a bit and not become so serious.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Now that you both have said everything, I don't have anything much to say. I'll just leave. Okay. Let's launch. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much, Surendra Mohan Pathakji, to be here. Your blessings are very important. One of the number one crime writer in India. पाठक साहब आप भी आइए प्लीज आप भी आइए अरे आइए आइए let पाठक साहब also be Thank you very much. Thank you, Thank you, Bharat Sahab. Thank you very much. Thank you, Zach.
Yes. And of course, after the talk, Piyush will sign the book for you absolutely free of charge. And you will have to pay for the book at the checkout. So, Piyush, what is it with serial killers that attracted you so much that you had to write? It's a quite bone-chilling book, this one. I just read it recently, and one does get quite scared. And then I was thinking, like, how scary must the author's mind be?
No, yeah, so you know what, I totally don't know where it comes from, but I don't know, I just loved crime fiction when I was a child, and I just read a lot about serial killers around the world, and you know, I kind of had this huge database in my head. And of course, I'm a well, now that I've done 4 novels, so I'm a novelist, but I always think of myself as a filmmaker. So I never really thought about writing a serial killer book. I thought maybe I'll make a serial killer film sometime now. So I never really thought that. After my 3 novels last week, I decided to do something slightly different because that was with a specific detective and I want to do something different. So the idea of serial killer popped into my head, and then I thought of writing the serial killer book. But the problem, the thing with the serial killer book is that in India, the idea of a serial killer is sort of not known, or people always sort of know only a couple of serial killers, Raman Raghav or Otto Shankar. And in my discovery, in my research, I found that even if you go to a police officer and you say, what about an Indian serial killer? They say, serial killer India mein nahi hota hai, America mein hota hai. So when I started researching, I found that in India there are a whole bunch of serial killers actually there, and people are unaware of this phenomenon, or at least they've sort of pushed it at the back of their, their heads. So I thought I'd write a book which brings it forward and also talks about the serial killers who exist within our country, who have operated, and the possibility of the next person next to you being a serial killer. So,
did you actually meet any serial killer, or do you have one in the family who has done some serial killing at any point of time?
No, I didn't meet any serial killer. It's a figment of my imagination. But my imagination is based on reality. So, while I was writing this, I felt that, the story is fictional, and people would at some point in time turn around and say, towards the end of the story, say, hey, this cannot happen. This does not happen in India. So I have created a bonus section at the end of the book where I have listed India's least known serial killers. And it might chill you to know that the youngest serial killer in the world is an Indian, 8 years old Amardeep Sada from Bihar. And 8-year-old boy is a serial killer. And in fact, when you read that section, you will think my section is tame compared to the actual reality.
Can you tell us something about this 8-year-old serial killer? I mean, how did you go about it at that age? I don't think I was so talented at the age of 8 that I could have gone around serial killing.
Yeah, it's a sad case. It's a disorder that he has that has no empathy. He has no empathy, and most serial killers lack empathy. Their empathy is the chronic loss of empathy creates is one of the reasons why a serial killer operates. So this boy, he picked up a little girl, an infant girl, from a school yard. And there was a lady who was working in the school yard who just left her child and gone away to do some other work. He picked up the child and disappeared. When the lady came back, she remembered that this boy was doing some work and hanging out and playing at the time that her baby disappeared. And she gathered the whole village and they went searching and they finally found the boy. And this boy said, he confessed and he said, "Kapda se maar ke suta dili hai," which means I hit the little child with a roof tile, a ceiling roof tile, and killed her. And he took them to this field where he had done a shallow grave and put the child. And then they couldn't find the parents. The parents had run away. The uncle of that boy revealed that that little boy, Amardeep Sada, had killed some few children from within the family, and they had hushed it up because it was a family affair. So that's also a lot happening in India. They hush up things. They don't want to talk about mental disorder because you want to sort of, it's a blind on you. It's somebody who's mentally ill in your family is like taboo. You don't want to talk about it. It's a bad thing. So it stems from that, that people don't want to talk about serial killers out here. So this is the story.
But do you think seriously, is it mostly like a mental disorder, or is it more like, I mean, are there people who do serial killer for gain? Like, I mean, who can make a living out of it? Like,
yeah, those are. So there's a mass murderer and a serial killer, slightly different. Although the lines get blurred, so you don't know. Like for example, there's a taxi killer. There was this person called a taxi killer who used to hire taxis from Mumbai to Agra, and in the middle, somebody kill the taxi driver and take the cab and sell it for 50,000 rupees. He had a gang, but they killed like a number of taxi drivers. So then he's a mass murderer. He was not, because a serial killer is somebody who's mentally imbalanced to the extent that he feels a need to kill to satisfy his urge. Sometimes it's sexual, sometimes it's not sexual at all. But now the lines have got blurred because you find that a person who has killed many times is also called a serial killer.
Right. But especially in the beginning of your book, you try to explore like what makes this character the main. Can we call him a protagonist?
Yeah, so that's a strange thing that I've kind of, while I started writing, I don't know, I started feeling a certain sense of empathy for my protagonist, for my antagonist.
And you tried to find out that how he
Yeah. So my thing was to explore what made the serial killer, and then what at one point of time what he wants to be become. So my idea was to have the journey with this man. So in the sense, people don't write about the serial killer from an empathetic point of view, but perhaps I have written from an empathetic point of view, just to understand him better.
Right.
And for my antagonist or the person who's chasing him, a lady police IPS officer, also to understand him better. So,
is it that once there's something like the first kill kind of happens accidentally and then you get, or I mean, how does one?
Yeah.
Is it that there are potential and some cross the line? What happens?
So
I mean, yeah, we don't know exactly what.
You mean like when you get hooked on? Suppose like I happen to kill somebody. Like
I mean, so how does that first thing? I mean, because the criminal is just a person who has crossed the line, and then that coming from that sense of power that you get, in a sense.
And you need to know it again.
So it's not everybody who can pull that trigger. Everybody has thought of at some point or the other. So that the line that separates us.
Scientific research has shown that serial killers lack empathy. In the sense, if I were to sort of talk about it from a deep scientific way, it's their amygdala, which is the emotional center of the brain, and has sort of hijacked the prefrontal cortex, which is the where you have intellect. So their empathy has been hampered to a certain degree, and even when their empathy is hampered, they could be corrected, and that's why I have talked about my practice from the childhood onwards, giving you or telling you that most serial killers become serial killers somewhere in their childhood, right? And it's incidences which occur in their childhood which kind of shape their future. So if you are able to identify that instance in that person, you could perhaps arrest that habit.
I mean, for example, criminals, like they say about pedophilia, that they gravitate towards certain professions. So if you quote, for example, in England, they discovered that they gravitate more towards schools, towards the profession of teaching, because that's where they would. And then when you think about it, it's kind of, so I mean, if you put, for example, figure out a pedophilic kind of mind, then you could arrest that and, in some way, when there are cases of generations of schoolboys being sodomized by school teachers and sociopaths and whatnot. And there's been many cases in the West where it's come out in horrific stories.
Also, I think many pedophiles have been priests.
So they come out. So if you could figure this out, maybe there's a lot of tragedies that could be avoided.
Unfortunately, you can't, because there is no specific pattern that they follow. See, this American stereotype of what we see in television shows and Dexter and Zodiac and all the, Seven and stuff like that. The serial killer kills according to the patterns of the moon or something like that. That does not exist. That's fictional, right? The actual serial killer can kill at any point of time. So, and it's also it's for a sense of gratification, that is so you have to map that person's childhood. Now, there are many cases of serial killers who became killers because of a head injury, right? So that head injury affected their brain to such a degree. So you can't really see he is predisposed towards that. So head injury sometimes is a congenital brain deformation, and sometimes it is the circumstances that their childhood, sort of creates. More often than not, it's the circumstances in the childhood. So that's why they it's a kind of nurture issue. Yeah, it's a nurture issue. Most of them, if you go back, they have had harrowing childhoods. Most of the serial killers who've been caught and, they have been researched and their backgrounds have been kind of understood.
So parents are likely to blame.
Yeah, but so sometimes they come from broken families, they have gone into, adoptive situations, they are in street children, etc. So now in the American stereotype, you have a serial killer who is working in a low-end job and trying to keep his head low and not get detected very much. And in the Indian context, he is working in a lower, lower strata of society. He is working in that strata, and
in the Indian situation, it's mostly from the almost underbelly.
Underbelly, yeah.
You never hear of or in India, it could be camouflaged as well. That's upper class. We never know.
I'm sure there are upper class serial killers in India. Of course, the upper class get away with a lot of stuff. So I guess.
But the upper class wouldn't they hire servant to
I would do that. I believe that the gratification is when it is executed by your own self. This is something you can't outsource.
Yeah. Okay. So, what about the other protagonist in your novel? It's a female police officer who is chasing this serial killer. And interestingly, you also made her into a murderer. Accidental.
Thank you for giving away the
It's in the very beginning of the book. So it's more like a teaser to make you find out what.
So I wanted to so there's a little bit of background. So my last 3 books, women were bad people in that, and I was writing in the noir genre, so I was working in the femme fatale. But a lot of people said, "Sir, aapki aurtein kharab kyun hai?" So I'm like, no, well, I got to do something about that, right? So I created a lady police IPS officer, and so I kind of wanted her to also empathize with this person and understand him, and to actually have empathy, you need to have something dark within you to be able to empathize with some darkness around you. Otherwise, I find a lot of people just don't understand. They would never understand why this person is behaving in such a way, unless there's something that you have encountered and something that has touched you very deeply and shaped your personality. Your understanding is limited to a surface understanding. So, to me, to get that deeper understanding, there was this slight darker past that I gave this. Although she's a police IPS officer, that she has a dark past also, and both that comes into a clash when she encounters this. She goes on this manhunt for this my serial killer.
you're planning to make it into a movie also.
Yeah,
You're
that's right.
directing it.
Yes, I will be directing it. Yeah.
So, how will that work? Because films, especially Indian films, tend to be, have a lot of comical elements, and they tend to be slightly more family oriented. And this might be very dangerous.
I think Johnny Lever does that.
Would it be like a very dark? Do you think what do you expect? How do you expect the audiences to react to?
Sudhir, well, you want to answer that since you are a king of dark stuff?
No, I'm thinking of it. This is why I'm not entering the serial killer. I'm also making a film about a serial killer. Yeah. One of my scripts, the one that I'm doing, is actually. I mean, it's got other things through the idea of a serial killer. It's not actually about that, and but this whole. But so yes, there is a change. You would have to keep the budget low, or you get a big star.
Yeah.
I mean,
so that's what I'm trying to do. I'm getting a big, trying to get a big star. Then
there are two ways.
Yeah. So the thing is, dark films are doing well. People are opening up to it. So yeah, okay. But see, again, at the end of it, it's a human story, right? So even if it is dark and if it's human, I think it works.
Yeah. Do you have any particular philosophy, or what's your thought process when you deal with sort of the type of extreme cruelty that is often depicted in this novel? When you deal with it in literature or in cinema, is it the same in both mediums, or is there differences in the written work and in the film work?
In the written work, you have free reign. You can describe a killing scene to a great extent. You have that. I don't think I can be so graphic, or I don't think I would like to be that graphic when I'm making it as a film, because so when I wear a filmmaker's hat, I think differently. Alfred Hitchcock said that so Alfred Hitchcock made all his films, great films, out of books. All based on books. So he was asked that how do you make a film, based on these books? So he says, I read the book and then I throw it away. And whatever sticks in my head, I make the film out of that, because that's the best part. So I will attempt to do that with my book, and I will throw it away and make it. And I forget, I forget. Today I had to, the book is launching, let me read it, and I might forget something, because I forget. After I've written it, I've forgotten many details which I've written. So that's a good thing for me, So I just throw it away and make
you have to reimagine it. Some things work because a story finds a medium also finds a story.
Yeah.
Right. So some stories are best described in film, some novels, some things like in a painting, some so abstract in music. So you have to be real careful about what you do. So you have to reimagine it. You have to throw it away.
Even while making films, when you write a script, you might shoot a scene which works very well in the script, but when you see it on screen, you say, shit, it doesn't work at all. So we throw it out.
I was thinking, there's quite a lot of decent, big, Hollywood horror movies, for example. I don't know if you've seen that Saw franchise. And there's another franchise called Hostel. And there's a lot of killing going on, and torture, and fairly extreme scenes, very graphic scenes in the film. But as a filmmaker, also as a writer, how do you deal with violence so that it just doesn't become just gratifying entertainment, but that it's what's your ethical take on the whole thing of that?
Yeah, that's a good question.
And it's been asked also.
So the thing is that I feel that I would not like, see, the imagination sometimes is much much more graphic than the visual itself. And so I would like to give you only enough visual information for you to be able to imagine it, well for yourself. I wouldn't like to get absolutely graphic, because I feel that sometimes that's a responsibility that you have to kind of exercise and not get to that graphic level where it sort of can off-put somebody. So it's best to tickle the person's imagination and leave it to that person to imagine. So in the book, perhaps you go X plus 1, but in film I would bring it down a notch and say I would go to up to X. And I wouldn't go to X raised to the power 2, right? What is it?
Yeah, I mean, but I'm a little careful about answering this question
Because it can get confused with censorship also. So I'm not advocating, I mean, it depends on the filmmaker. Right. And no, so I mean, if you remove, I'm not here to say that anybody else should do what I'm saying. Right? I mean, and there should be this kind of freedom for each artist to imagine it the way he does. But sexuality and violence have both a problem for me as a filmmaker because cinema is a concrete medium. Whereas the word, the act is an abstract thing. So you imagine, so everybody has their own idea of what I'm describing. This becomes like sexual intercourse, this kind of, so I mean, very difficult to find a great erotic movie. A lot of people have been trying. For me, it becomes a little dissatisfying when I'm seeing it and a bit boring. It's almost like voyeurism. Because sex happens at the head of two people also. So in the book you can enter the head, in cinema you're being too concrete, So I find that a little boring at times. So I mean, a lot of films now, I just saw a film in Cannes, which is Kasparno's Love, which, is like it's everything that you've seen in a porn movie and more. In a mainstream actors, or Antichrist, for example, Antichrist and stuff like that. So I mean, I find that a bit nymphomania, a lot of those films. You will see it for me after a while becomes boring. It's not doing much to me, in a sense. I think. So I mean, how do you do that? Is a question that I think each filmmaker has to answer. But I don't think that in this day and age, beyond certification, there should be censorship.
So there's something called the Zeigarnik effect here. So you leave the image or the word at that point, and that you reach that sweet spot where from onwards that the person who's receiving it builds it and takes it into his own imagination. So you are, as a filmmaker, you're always attempting to reach that point, and not more than that.
Is there any, do you think, might there be any connection between fictional violence and real life violence? Like when you write about somebody who kills, or when you make a film where there's some extreme violence, I mean, do you think like some people might be stupid enough to attempt to, do those things in reality? I mean, or do you think it's sort of like a violent movie, like when this comes out as a movie, perhaps, that it might sort of desensitize people and turn them into slightly more serial killer?
You currently over here, you have thrown the table by now. So Quentin Tarantino has been doing it for 15 years or 20 years. Has violence, everybody become Tarantino-esque killers? No, they haven't. Really, I think it's more about we are actually reflecting reality rather than creating something the other way around. These things happen. And that's why I say my fictional story, after you read it and you read the bonus section, which is reality, you will see that I am restrained. I am restrained. Reality is much more barbaric. So, and those people have not read books. Those people have not read books and got into the. You have the case of a person called Cyanide Mohan. Cyanide Mohan. He killed 20 women in one area in Mysore, between two districts of Karnataka. And his scam was that he would take a woman and convince her to get married to him, and have sex with her. Take away all her gold jewelry. The woman would come wearing all her gold jewelry. He would take away all her gold jewelry and give her a pill of cyanide, saying, "Oh, it's a birth control pill." She would have it in a bus stop, a bus station in Mysore, and kill. Now, the funny thing is, during a period of 4 years, he killed 20 women, and during 1.5 year period, he killed almost 12 women in one bus stop, in bus station in Mysore, in one bus station. He killed these women, and the sad thing is, no police person could put it together that there was a serial killer operating over there. Although they found 12 dead women in one bus stop over a period of 1.5 years. Come on.
Yeah.
And at the same time, there was another woman operating in the same way called Cyanide Malika. She was operating in the same neighborhood, within the same district, same districts. But the police never put it together that there are two people operating giving cyanide. He was caught because of a mistake that somebody else made.
And these serial killers never kind of met up and formed a trade union.
No.
Let me ask you another thing. Like, considering that you write such, you have your novels suggest that you have quite a nasty imagination. What is your family members?
My wife is sitting right there. Ask her. My imagination. I discuss. What if this happened? But I had all these crazy imagination things. Always. Always I had this crazy. So when I saw, for example, 9/11, I felt haven't I imagined this sometime back? I had imagined it.
And you think that caused it to happen?
No, I don't think so. I think there are other people also with a fertile imagination, not just me. So, somebody just imagined it at the same time.
Do you think that crime fiction can have some kind of therapy function for readers or maybe writers?
It is. I believe that crime fiction is catharsis for the reader. When you see, because what happens is in real life, justice is not so easily delivered. And people want a sense of justice in their lives. Somewhere it makes us feel that yes, life is worth living. And in a crime fiction book, more often than not, the justice is delivered, even though it might be bittersweet or it might, have some.
Whatever you make, the crime fiction within the films, whatever, kind of reflect the society. Like if you see Korean films, and you see this idea of a serial killer, very often, and he's almost caught, but slips away. Right?
No, that's for the sequel because Koreans
they want to be the bad memories of murder, for instance. Even that. One film is
Chaser.
Chaser. It's not that crime pays, but justice is rarely delivered. So maybe some psyche in that society where they feel that sense of, not a sense of justice, not that somebody's powerful slip away, that the innocent are trapped. So something that reflects a mindset, I think, I don't know. It's not just titillatory that you like this. I like a sense of this, a sense of that.
So I was asked this question when I started writing. I think Namita Gokhale asked me this question when I told her I'm writing crime fiction. I'm going to start writing crime fiction. So she asked me, but what in India? So are you creating something? So I said I'm creating a character called Inspector Veerkar. So he said, but in India you don't, how do you solve crimes? Nothing, justice is never delivered. But I created a protagonist who delivers justice Indian style, which might not be within the bounds of law, but justice is delivered. So that's the Indian way. Somewhere along the way, it can be karmic justice or whatever, but justice is delivered slightly, in a slightly skewed manner. I believe that justice should be delivered because at the end of it, the catharsis helps the reader move ahead.
Do you believe in karma?
Not in the Buddhist sort of way. I believe in karma in the way it's defined in Hindu, that I should keep doing my work. So I keep doing my work and things will happen.
Yeah, it also affects in the life of criminals and even the crime novel. Should it have an element of karma
in the Buddhist sort of way you're trying to say? Because karma is spoken in 2-3 different ways. Are you talking in the international Buddhist karma is a bitch kind of thing?
Whichever way you want to.
No, because we look at karma in a totally different way. Karma is for us the work, what you have been assigned to do or what you choose to do, you do it best. Karma karo apna. Or भूल जाओ उसको चिल्लाएगी भागा भाई कर्म निवारण का रास्ते में. So I believe in that aspect of it. So when I mean, like Sunil, you said, how did you make the transition? I think at one point of time, I just looked at myself as a filmmaker. Okay, I'm only a filmmaker. And then I started writing and I said, okay, but I'm not just a filmmaker. Why did I ever think of myself only as a filmmaker? I'm actually a storyteller. Today, I'm telling a story on paper. Yesterday, I was telling a story on book, on film. Tomorrow, I will tell a story on film and or digital or television or radio. So it's all about telling the story. So I sort of focus it as my karma is to tell stories. Book mein aaya, film mein aaya, TV mein aaya, digital mein aaya. That's the destiny of that project. But my karma is to tell stories. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm just a failed novelist.
One day you write a novel.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't like it because it's terrifying to sit alone and all those things went in your head. So I kind of run out screaming and start drinking too much. Film is a much more social medium. There's an immediate. You write the collaborators. You interact on a set. You get an immediate feedback. You kind of. So I find, it's a cruel medium because you're imposing that novelist will on a lot of people who don't like it. So most people hate a film director, but I find myself not being able to write now. But yeah, I mean, you should be able to do. I think I don't think one should demystify. You should try and think and over-analyze this. Right. It's a we always, know more than what we can do, So, I mean, it's a question of instinct and talent and where that story finds you. And I think the story finds you and it tells you things. So if you sit and listen, so it might be mystical, pretentious, whatever it is. I don't try and over-analyze it. If something compels me to write a novel, like it's entering my head, this one book, one idea which I don't think I can ever make into a film, but keeps intruding. Maybe I will write a novel, but I won't.
You know what? I till date, like I was saying, I was not able to come to grips with the fact that I'm writing as a novel, like a novel. I'm a novelist. But I keep thinking of myself only as a filmmaker. Only now, after my fourth book, I'm sort of trying to acknowledge that I'm a novelist, but up till now, I feel that when I started,
I think it's as a kid who grew up in a small town, and small town kids find solace in libraries in my time. Yeah. During summer holidays, we were the children of heads of department of the university, and we had the good fortune that the library was open for us 24 hours, and I wandered into the fiction section, and I found American fiction. So I mean, if you say that there is some big influence in my life, there's a lot of books that I shouldn't have read when I was a kid, but that's nobody stopped you when you were sitting in the library and these weird guys entered your head like Norman Mailer and all that. So the standard was so high that I could never dare to write a book. It's just that that when I sit and write a book, I stop at the first line, but I don't think it's like a Mailer line, and then I think,
I suppose my standards were lower. So I was reading favorite passages and
I started. I read everything. I read James Atkins's every book. And I think he's a really great writer. Personally, if you ask me, something like The Way the Cookie Crumbles is a great book. Right? And about 5-6 books, he's written 100, I think. Just but about 5-6 of his books are great books. I mean.
We have a couple of minutes left. I thought that if anybody in the audience would like to make a comment or ask a question from views, there are some microphones around. Just wave your hand and speak freely. Nobody's going to serially kill you, at least out of asking you on stage.
I just wanted to ask a question that particularly are all serial killers psychopaths?
Yeah, I mean, mostly. So I was trying to tell you that there's a slightly where the lines have gotten blurred, where a mass murderer, and So is somebody mass murderer is also called like he kills many people at the same time. But there's another definition of a mass murderer. For example, a taxi killer who is to do it for money, but the lines have got blurred, so he is also called a serial killer at this point in time. But the essence, if you ask me, of the definition of a serial killer is that he has to have a mental imbalance, which is invariably a sort of a psychosis.
Actually, the urge which we were talking about, that the serial killers have the urge to kill.
Right.
That urge emerges from the psychopathic behavior only.
That's right, yes.
That's what I was thinking.
Yes.
And do all the serial killers have a kind of ritual?
No, so that's exactly what I'm telling you. That is the American stereotype, all these rituals and stuff like that. It doesn't really happen.
I just want to quickly ask you about your research, because obviously you seem to have done a lot. Where did you do it? In India, I assume you must have gone around and got the material. So from where was that?
I spoke to a lot of people. I read a lot of reports which were buried away, etc.
In police stations or in the box?
No. With certain people who are interested in crime. And I won't tell you. I know a whole bunch of people who are very interested in crime, and they just kind of collect data about crime, etc. So I met them across the country. I have friends, and then now they are my friends. During the course of time when I started writing, they sort of became friends with me, etc. So they had collected data, and I sort of met them. So I picked up things even like small Hindi newspaper clippings which they had, and from there I got information which was not available, and some police people gave me some information, and some police people tried to obviously tell me this doesn't exist. Yeah. So.
Hello, sir. My question is, why did you choose this critical subject? Why not some other crimes which are happening in India?
Yeah, good question, because I actually was interested in serial killers, and I believe that that's something which is being ignored. The idea of a serial killer existing in India and the idea of serial killers existing in India has been ignored. So I wanted to write a book which would kind of probably bring that to the fore. That's why I decided to do it. I'm a crime fiction writer, so I wrote it in the form of crime fiction. But if you read the book, it's quite informative as to how and the how of a serial killer within the Indian context. Jerry, please be quiet. Yeah, that's him again.
You were talking about mass murder. Now the serial killers, the term is being replaced by serial blast. So where do you replace? How can you relate both serial killer and serial blast nowadays?
Serial blast. Serial blast. But serial blast is a different thing, Serial blast is the bomb blast that happens simultaneously almost. That's across the city or across the place. Yeah, but that's a terrorist. That is not an act of a. See, okay, very good. Actually, there is a point out there. A serial killer is a lone actor. He works on his own. Rarely have been cases of a group of people becoming serial killers. It's mostly a single person because of affected by psychosis, working out, towards executing that. So there's a difference out there. Serial blasts are normally done with groups of people who want to commit acts of terror.
I have a question. Two filmmakers are there. So, why is it that in our country, when we make films on crime, most of them are laughable, they're idiotic, they don't stick in our memory, except for one which I saw in Tamil called Sivapuru, which was Red Rose, made later with Punam Jula and Rajesh, a complete disaster. But in Tamil did a great job, and that was the only movie which kept me with it. Another one by Balu Mahindra. But apart from that, none of the films which are around murder really work. Is it because we don't take crime seriously and we think it's taboo, it should be brushed in the carpet, we don't do enough research, or we think that it's something which is so dirty and awful that we don't have to look at it? What's the reason? Both of you, anyone can take it.
So you want to take that?
I was thinking, there's a film which I was an assistant, a film called Khamosh, which Chopra directed, which was, I think, perhaps the only suspense film in a sense. Otherwise, Indian films have used crime for, cabaret sequences and ramps and, the approach is not right. But I don't know, because I seriously, I think that, crime is about great areas. Crime is I there's so much talk about this Arushi case. And there's so much imagination about this from the public. The imagination that comes out in the media and in the public tells you as much about the public as it does about the so-called protagonists, you see. Because if the parents of Arushi are innocent, then what have we imagined? And where are our heads? And who are we then? It provokes a question which are uncomfortable. In that dark hall, then you sit and think. I mean, many films have not asked them, but for me, that Arushi murder case provokes that question. Then who are we? That if we had imagined this about the parents and the stories that we have told and the ideas that we had about that young kid who was 14, and if I tend to, after a while I started trying to blot out what was appearing because it was so sickening. Somebody should do a story about what kind of people are we to buy into that. So a crime story often will tell you a lot of things about yourself, because the criminal is just a person who crosses that line. Also, so sometimes a crime fiction will tell you more things about that world or that society. I mean, a Chandler will tell you more about the American society, and a lot of treatises, sociological treatises more. Those that interact with that genre in a serious, are truly talented, and then do it like that.
Also, the Bollywood form, it sort of limits you to kind of explore the format of a crime fiction or crime thriller in the truest sense, because like you said, you have to put comedy, gaane bhi aane chahiye, all that stuff. So, that kind of hampers. So what has happened is, filmmakers have not explored that form to the degree that it should be.
But now somebody like Sriram Raghavan.
Yeah. So now they are coming. It's happening. But it will take time for us to have a true, great, a batch of great films in the crime genre out there.
I think now we need to continue the discussion off stage because we ran out of time. But I would like to thank you.
Thank you very much
for a fantastic session, and thank you all for your attention.
Thank you.
And the book is the same and will be signed by Piyush personally on a ghostwriter.
Thank you, Zach.
Thank you so much, Mr. T. Mishra, Mr. Piyush Jha, Mr. Zachary. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, with this, we end the last session of the day. Thank you for being a great audience and making this event a success. We will now be drinking for tea for about 15 minutes, after which we will start with the Curious Crimes quiz on crime fiction, powered by Quizcraft Global. Please assemble back at 5:30. Just a few reminders. The first 3 rows of the first 3 rows from me will have to be empty. And whoever is interested in doing the quiz, please come a little earlier so we can start on time. Thank you so much.